The night she chose to break into a killer's car, Chloe Carter had exactly two options: freeze to death in a New York alley, or risk dying faster at the hands of whoever owned that black-armored SUV. She picked the SUV. 3 hours later, she woke up staring down the barrel of a gun held by Adrian Versetti, the most dangerous man in the city, and realized freezing might have been the smarter choice. But when you're a disgraced journalist with nothing left to lose and a conspiracy that could burn the underworld to ash, sometimes the only way out is straight through the fire. If you're intrigued, stay with me until the end. Hit that like button and drop a comment with your city so I can see how far this story travels. The blizzard hit New York like a punishment. Chloe Carter pressed herself against the brick wall of an abandoned loading dock, her entire body shaking so hard her teeth rattled. The cold wasn't just biting anymore. It was devouring. Her fingers had gone numb an hour ago. Her toes might as well have been blocks of ice jammed into boots that were more holes than leather. She couldn't feel her face. The wind screamed through the alley, hurling snow sideways, turning the world into a white static blur. She'd lost track of time. Maybe it was midnight. Maybe later. The city had emptied out hours ago, everyone with half a brain holed up somewhere warm while the storm tore through the streets like it had a personal grudge. Chloe didn't have somewhere warm. She didn't have anywhere at all. 6 months ago, she'd been Chloe Carter, investigative journalist, the kind of name that made corrupt officials sweat and corporate lawyers scramble. She'd broken stories that ended careers, toppled administrations, sent people to prison. She'd been untouchable. Then she touched the wrong story. She still didn't know exactly what she'd stumbled into, only that it was big enough to get her editor killed, her apartment burned, and her name smeared across every outlet in the city as a fabricator, a liar, a conspiracy theorist who'd lost her mind. Her sources vanished. Her colleagues turned their backs. Her bank accounts were frozen by some legal maneuver she didn't understand and couldn't fight. Within a month, she was on the street. Within 2, she was invisible. Now she was just another body the city chewed up and forgot about. Her breath came out in ragged clouds. She tried to curl tighter into herself, but there wasn't any heat left to conserve. She was running on fumes. Her vision kept blurring at the edges, dark spots creeping in. She knew what that meant. Hypothermia didn't ask permission. She forced her eyes open wider, trying to fight the drowsiness pulling at her skull. If she fell asleep now, she wouldn't wake up. She knew that, but the exhaustion was so heavy, and the cold made everything feel distant, like she was already halfway gone. Maybe that was fine. Maybe she'd fought long enough. Her eyelids started to droop. Then she saw the headlights. They cut through the snow like blades, bright and sharp, coming from the opposite end of the alley. Chloe's brain struggled to process it. Vehicles didn't come down this alley. It was a dead end, blocked off by a chain-link fence and a pile of construction debris that had been sitting there for years. But the headlights kept coming. She squinted through the snow, her sluggish mind trying to make sense of the shape materializing out of the storm. Big, black, expensive. An SUV, armored by the look of it, with tinted windows so dark they looked like sheets of obsidian. It rolled to a stop about 20 feet from where she crouched, engine idling, exhaust pluming into the frozen air. Chloe didn't move. Whoever was inside that vehicle wasn't here by accident. People with cars like that didn't end up in alleys like this unless they had business. The kind of business that didn't involve witnesses. She should stay hidden. She should stay quiet. But the warmth rolling off that engine hit her like a hallucination. Her body made the decision before her brain caught up. She staggered forward, legs barely holding her weight, snow crunching under her boots. She moved like a ghost, or maybe something already dead, one shaking hand reaching out toward the SUV's rear door. It was locked. Of course it was locked. She tried the handle again, harder this time, her frozen fingers slipping off the metal. A sound came out of her throat, half sob, half snarl. She didn't care anymore. She didn't care who was inside or what they'd do to her. She just needed to be warm, just for a minute, just long enough to remember what it felt like. She pulled harder. The door didn't budge. But the driver's side door opened. Chloe froze. A man stepped out. He was tall, broad-shouldered, dressed in a long black coat that looked like it cost more than she used to make in a month. Dark hair, sharp features, the kind of face you saw in magazines selling watches that could buy a house. He didn't look cold. He looked like the cold wouldn't dare touch him. He looked at her. Chloe's survival instincts finally kicked in. She stumbled backward, her legs almost giving out, but the man didn't move toward her. He just stood there, one hand resting on the open door, his expression unreadable. Then he said, "You're going to freeze." His voice was low, steady, matter-of-fact. Chloe's teeth chattered too hard to answer. The man's eyes flicked over her, taking in the torn coat, the boots held together with duct tape, the way she was shaking so hard she could barely stand. His jaw tightened just slightly, and then he did something she didn't expect. He stepped aside. "Get in." Chloe stared at him. This was a trap. It had to be. Men who looked like that, who drove cars like that, didn't help people like her. They used them, buried them, forgot them. But the cold was a living thing now, clawing into her bones, and she didn't have the strength to run even if she wanted to. She got in. The warmth hit her like a physical blow. Her legs buckled and she collapsed onto the back seat, gasping, her whole body shuddering violently as the heat started to seep into her frozen skin. It hurt. It hurt so much she wanted to scream, but all that came out was a choked whimper. The door closed behind her. A moment later, the driver's door opened and the man slid back in. He didn't look at her. He didn't say anything. He just put the SUV in gear and pulled forward, the vehicle gliding smoothly through the snow like the storm was nothing. Chloe tried to focus, tried to think, but her brain felt like sludge. She slumped against the seat, her vision swimming, the warmth pulling her down into darkness. The last thing she heard before she passed out was the man's voice, quiet and cold. "You just made a very stupid mistake." When Chloe woke up, she wasn't in the SUV anymore. She was lying on cold concrete. Her eyes snapped open and she jerked upright, adrenaline slamming through her veins. The movement sent a wave of dizziness crashing over her, and she had to brace herself with one hand to keep from toppling over. Garage. She was in a garage, a massive one. Industrial. The kind of space that could hold a dozen vehicles easy, with high ceilings, reinforced steel beams, and overhead lights that cast everything in harsh white glare. The floor was spotless. No oil stains, no tire marks, nothing. It looked more like an operating room than a garage. And it was full of cars, expensive ones. A Bentley, a Maserati, a matte black Lamborghini that looked like it belonged in a museum. All of them pristine, all of them lined up like soldiers. Chloe's stomach dropped. She tried to stand, but her legs were still shaky, and she only made it halfway up before a voice cut through the silence. "Don't." She froze. The man from the SUV was standing about 10 feet away, hands in the pockets of his coat, watching her with the kind of calm that made her skin crawl. Up close, under the lights, he looked even more dangerous. Sharp cheekbones, cold eyes, the kind of face that didn't waste energy on expressions it didn't need. Chloe's heart hammered against her ribs. "Where am I?" "My property." His voice was flat, emotionless, like he was stating a fact about the weather. Chloe's eyes darted around the space, looking for an exit. She spotted a door on the far side of the garage, but there were two men standing in front of it. Big men, armed men. They weren't pointing their guns at her, but they didn't need to. The message was clear. She wasn't leaving. "You broke into my vehicle," the man said. He took a step closer. "In my world, that makes you either very stupid or very desperate." Chloe forced herself to meet his eyes. "I was freezing to death, and now you're not." Another step. "So the question is, who sent you?" Chloe blinked. "What?" "Who sent you?" His tone didn't change, but something in the air shifted. The two men by the door straightened slightly, their hands drifting toward their weapons. Chloe's pulse spiked. "Nobody sent me. I told you I was freezing. People don't break into my vehicles by accident." "I didn't know it was yours." "Then you're an idiot." He was close now, close enough that she could see the faint scar along his jawline, the way his eyes didn't blink, the absolute certainty in his posture that he could end her life without breaking a sweat. Chloe's breath came faster. "I swear I don't know who you are." "Liar." The word cracked through the air like a gunshot. One of the men by the door moved, pulling his weapon. Chloe's hands shot up. Wait, please. Give me one reason I shouldn't put a bullet in your head right now." His voice was so calm it made her want to scream. Her mind raced, scrambling for something, anything that could keep her alive. She didn't know who this man was. She didn't know what kind of world she'd stumbled into. But she knew one thing. Men like this didn't stay powerful by being careless. Men like this had enemies, and enemies meant leverage. "Because I have information," she blurted out. The man stopped. For the first time, something flickered across his face. Not belief, not interest, just the faintest shift in his attention, like a predator hearing something move in the brush. "Information," he repeated. Chloe nodded, her throat dry. "Yeah. About what?" Her mind was spinning. She didn't have information. She didn't have anything. She was a washed-up journalist who hadn't worked a real story in months. But she'd learned a long time ago that the truth didn't matter as much as what people believed. And right now, she needed him to believe she was useful. "About you," she said. His expression didn't change. "Go on." Chloe swallowed hard. "There's a contract. On your life." Silence. The man stared at her. Then he smiled. It wasn't a nice smile. "You think I don't know that?" he said quietly. "I have a dozen contracts on my life at any given moment. Try again." Chloe's stomach twisted. This one's different. How? She didn't know. She was making this up as she went, pulling fragments of half-remembered stories and rumors she'd heard on the street, stitching them together into something that sounded plausible. "It's organized," she said. "Not just one person. A coalition. Multiple players pooling resources. They're going after the top of the food chain. All of you." The man's smile faded. "All of us," he repeated slowly. Chloe nodded. "The summit. Next week. They're planning something." That part, at least, was true. She'd heard whispers about a summit, some kind of meeting between the city's major power players. She didn't know the details, but she knew it was happening, and she knew people were nervous about it. The man studied her for a long moment. Then he turned to one of the guards. "Check her." The guard moved forward and Chloe tensed, but all he did was pull out a small scanner and wave it over her body. After a few seconds, he shook his head. "No wire. No tracker." The man turned back to Chloe. "What's your name?" "Chloe." "Chloe what?" She hesitated. If he ran her name, he'd find out everything. The ruined career, the accusations, the fact that nobody in their right mind would trust her with information anymore, but lying would get her killed faster. "Carter," she said. "Chloe Carter." Recognition flashed across his face. "The journalist." Her chest tightened. "Former journalist. The one who fabricated the Harmon expose." "I didn't fabricate anything." He raised an eyebrow. "The courts disagree." "The courts were bought." "By who?" "I don't know." He laughed. It was a short, sharp sound, completely devoid of humor. "You don't know, but you expect me to believe you have inside information on a coordinated assassination plot." Chloe's hands curled into fists. "Believe what you want. I'm telling you what I know." "And what do you know exactly?" "That someone's coming for you, and if you don't listen, you're going to die." The man's expression went very still. Then he stepped closer, leaning down until his face was inches from hers. "Listen carefully," he said softly. "I don't know what game you're playing, but if you're lying to me, I will find out. And when I do, I'll make sure you regret every second you spent wasting my time. Do you understand?" Chloe met his eyes. She should be terrified. She was terrified. But somewhere beneath the fear, something else was stirring. Anger, defiance. The same stubborn refusal to break that had kept her digging into stories when everyone told her to stop. "I understand," she said quietly. "Do you?" For a moment, neither of them moved. Then the man straightened, his jaw tight. "Lock her in the East Wing," he said to the guards. "No phone, no internet. If she tries to leave, shoot her." He turned and walked toward the door. "Wait," Chloe called after him. "What's your name?" He paused, glancing back over his shoulder. "Versetti," he said. "Adrian Versetti." Then he was gone. They didn't throw her in a cell. That was the first surprise. The East Wing turned out to be a guest suite, small but clean, with a bed, a bathroom, and a window that overlooked a snow-covered courtyard. The door locked from the outside, but other than that, it looked like a normal bedroom. Chloe sat on the edge of the bed, her mind racing. Adrian Versetti. She'd heard the name before. Everyone had. He was one of the ghosts of the city, powerful, elusive, the kind of man who operated in the shadows and never left fingerprints. Rumors swirled around him like smoke. Some said he ran half the black market in New York. Others said he owned politicians, judges, entire precincts. A few claimed he didn't exist at all, that Vercetti was just a name people used when they didn't want to admit they didn't know who was really pulling the strings. Chloe had never dug into him. She'd never had a reason to. Until now. She stood and walked to the window, staring out at the snow. Her reflection stared back, gaunt, hollow-eyed, a stranger wearing her face. She'd lied to him, not about the contract. She didn't know if that was real or not, but she'd lied about having solid information. She didn't have proof. She didn't have sources. She had fragments, whispers, the kind of half-formed leads that used to get her excited but now just felt like ghosts. And she'd bet her life on them. Her hands were still shaking. She pressed her palms against the cold glass, forcing herself to breathe. She'd bought herself time. That was something. And if she could find a way to make herself useful, really useful, maybe she could turn this into more than just survival. Maybe she could turn it into a way back. The door opened behind her. Chloe spun around. A woman stepped into the room. Middle-aged, sharp-eyed, dressed in a plain black suit. She was carrying a tray with food, real food, not the scraps Chloe had been living on for months. "Eat," the woman said, setting the tray on the bed. Her accent was faint, Eastern European maybe. Chloe didn't move. "Who are you?" "Irrelevant." "Is he going to kill me?" The woman's expression didn't change. "That depends on whether you're useful." She turned to leave. "Wait," Chloe said. "The summit. When is it?" The woman paused in the doorway, her hand on the frame. 5 days, she said. Then she was gone. Chloe stared at the closed door. 5 days. She had 5 days to prove she wasn't lying. 5 days to find something real. Or she was dead. Holtz. She didn't sleep. The bed was soft. The room was warm. But every time she closed her eyes, she saw Adrian Vercetti's face. Calm, cold, utterly certain that he could end her without consequence. He probably could. By the time pale gray light started seeping through the window, Chloe was pacing, her mind churning through everything she knew. The summit. A meeting of the city's most powerful players. If someone was planning to hit them all at once, it would have to be coordinated. Professional. The kind of operation that took months to plan and millions to fund. But who had that kind of reach? And why now? She needed access to files, to contacts, to anything that could give her a thread to pull. But she was locked in a room with no phone, no computer, no way to reach the outside world. She was useless. The thought made her want to scream. The door opened again. This time, it was Adrian. He stepped inside, closing the door behind him, and the room suddenly felt smaller. He was dressed differently now, dark slacks, a white shirt with the sleeves rolled up, no jacket. It should have made him look more casual, but somehow it only made him more intimidating. "Did you eat?" he asked. Chloe blinked. "What?" "The food. Did you eat it?" She glanced at the tray, still untouched on the bed. "I wasn't hungry. You were starving 12 hours ago." "I had other things on my mind." Adrian's gaze flicked to the window, then back to her. "You've been pacing all night." It wasn't a question. Chloe crossed her arms. "You've been watching me." "Of course I have." He said it like it was obvious, like privacy was a concept that didn't apply to her anymore. Chloe's jaw tightened. "What do you want?" "To see if you're worth keeping alive." "And?" Adrian walked further into the room, his hands in his pockets, his expression unreadable. "You told me there's a contract, a coalition, an organized hit on the summit." "Yeah." "Prove it." Chloe's stomach dropped. You have access to files? Sources? Hard evidence?" "Not here, but..." "Then you lied." The words hung in the air like a blade. Chloe's heart hammered. "I didn't lie. I told you what I know. You told me a story." Adrian stepped closer. "A convenient story that bought you a warm bed and a few extra hours of life. That's not the same as proof." "I can get proof," Chloe said quickly. "If you give me access..." "Access to what?" "Anything. A computer. A phone. Let me make some calls." Adrian laughed. It was a short, humorless sound. "You think I'm going to hand you a phone so you can call whoever you're working for and tell them exactly where you are? I'm not working for anyone. Then you're just desperate. Yes. The word came out sharper than she intended. Yes, I'm desperate. I've been living on the street for months. I'm broke, I'm blacklisted, and I have nothing. But that doesn't mean I'm lying. Adrian studied her. Why should I believe you? He asked quietly. Chloe met his eyes. Because if I wanted you dead, I wouldn't have told you about the contract. I would have just let it happen. Maybe you're playing a longer game. Or maybe I'm just trying to survive. Silence stretched between them. Then Adrian pulled something from his pocket, a small, sleek phone. He held it out. Chloe stared at it. You have 1 hour, Adrian said. Make your calls, find your proof. If you can convince me this threat is real, I'll keep you alive. If you can't... He didn't finish the sentence. He didn't need to. Chloe took the phone. Her hands were shaking again, but this time it wasn't from the cold. It was from hope. Chloe stared at the phone in her hand like it might explode. 1 hour. She had 1 hour to pull a miracle out of thin air, to prove that the story she'd spun to save her own life wasn't just desperation talking. 1 hour to find something solid enough to convince a man like Adrian Vercetti that she was worth more alive than dead. No pressure. Adrian was still watching her, his expression unreadable. He didn't move, didn't speak, just stood there with his arms crossed like he had all the time in the world. Like her life wasn't ticking away with every second that passed. Chloe's thumb hovered over the phone's screen. Who the hell was she supposed to call? 6 months ago, she would have had a dozen contacts she could reach out to. Sources, informants, people who owed her favors or trusted her enough to talk. But that was before her career imploded, before her name became synonymous with conspiracy theories and professional suicide. Most of her contacts had ghosted her the second the accusations started flying. The ones who hadn't were either dead or too scared to pick up. Her mind raced through the short list of people who might still take her call. Marcus Chen, former NYPD detective, retired early after a corruption scandal he swore he didn't deserve. He'd fed her tips for years, always off the record, always careful. Last she'd heard, he was working private security somewhere in Brooklyn. If anyone still had their ear to the ground, it was Marcus. She dialed the number from memory, her heart pounding. It rang once, twice, 3 times. Then a click. Yeah? Marcus's voice was rough, cautious, the tone of a man who'd learned not to trust unknown numbers. Marcus, it's Chloe. Silence. For a second, she thought he was going to hang up. Chloe Carter? He said finally. Jesus Christ, I thought you were dead. Not yet. Where the hell are you? I heard... I don't have time to explain, Chloe cut in. I need information. Fast. Marcus let out a low whistle. You've got some nerve calling me after... I know what people are saying about me, but I need you to trust me one more time. Trust you? Marcus's laugh was bitter. You torched your entire reputation, Chloe. You made sources look like idiots. You think I want my name anywhere near yours? Chloe glanced at Adrian. He hadn't moved, but she could feel the weight of his attention pressing down on her like a physical thing. Marcus, please. There's a summit happening in 5 days. Major players. I'm hearing whispers about a coordinated hit. Another pause. Where are you hearing this? Does it matter? Yeah, it does. Because the last time you heard whispers, 3 people ended up in the ground, and you ended up on the street. Chloe's grip tightened on the phone. That wasn't my fault. Wasn't it? The words stung more than they should have. She forced herself to stay calm. I need to know if there's chatter. Anything about contracts, mercs being moved into the city, unusual activity around high-level targets. Marcus was quiet for a long moment. Then he sighed. There's always chatter, Chloe. Half of it's bullshit. And the other half? The other half gets people killed. So there is something. Marcus didn't answer right away. She could hear him breathing on the other end of the line, weighing his options. There have been rumors, he said finally. Nothing concrete. But yeah, people are nervous. Word is something big is going down soon. Nobody knows what, but the smart money's staying off the streets. Chloe's pulse quickened. What kind of something big? If I knew that, I'd be charging you for it. Marcus, look, all I've got are pieces. A couple of contractors showed up in the city last week. Eastern European, ex-military types. They're keeping a low profile, but they're here. And there's been movement on the dark web. Encrypted forums lighting up with job postings, big money being thrown around for specialists. What kind of specialist? The kind you hire when you want someone dead, and you don't want it traced back to you. Chloe exhaled slowly. It wasn't proof, but it was something, a thread she could pull. Do you have names? She asked. Locations? Anything I can use? Use for what? Chloe, what the hell are you into? She glanced at Adrian again. He was still watching her, his expression giving nothing away. I can't tell you that. Then I can't help you. Marcus? No, I'm serious. You call me out of nowhere asking about contract killers and hits on major players, and you won't tell me why. That's a red flag the size of a building, Chloe. I'm not sticking my neck out for someone who won't even be straight with me. Chloe's chest tightened. She wanted to tell him everything, that she was standing in the private estate of a man who could kill her with a phone call, that she was gambling her life on a story she wasn't even sure was real. But the words wouldn't come. Because if she told Marcus where she was, what she was doing, he'd think she'd lost her mind. Maybe she had. I'm trying to stop something bad from happening, she said quietly. That's all I can say. Marcus was silent. Then he let out a long, tired breath. You always were a stubborn pain in the ass. Does that mean you'll help me? It means I'll give you a name. One name. After that, you're on your own. Chloe grabbed a pen and paper from the nightstand. Go ahead. Elena Volkov. She runs a private security firm out of Queens, but that's just the front. Word is she brokers high-end contracts, assassinations, extractions, the kind of jobs that don't make the news. If there's a coordinated hit being planned, she'd know about it. How do I find her? You don't. She finds you, and trust me, Chloe, you don't want that. I don't have a choice. Marcus laughed, but there was no humor in it. Yeah, you never did. The line went dead. Chloe lowered the phone, her mind already racing. Elena Volkov. A name. A lead. It wasn't much, but it was more than she'd had 5 minutes ago. She looked up at Adrian. I've got something. He raised an eyebrow. I'm listening. Chloe hesitated. This was the moment where she either doubled down or backed off, where she either made herself indispensable or signed her own death warrant. She chose to double down. There's a woman named Elena Volkov, she said. She brokers contracts for high-level hits. If someone's planning to take out multiple targets at the summit, she'd be involved. Adrian's expression didn't change, but something shifted in his posture. A tightness around his eyes, a subtle tension in his jaw. He knew the name. Where did you hear that? He asked quietly. A source. Someone I trust. Someone you trust. Adrian's tone was flat. You've been living on the street for months, blacklisted by every outlet in the city, and you expect me to believe you still have reliable sources? I didn't say they were happy to hear from me, Chloe shot back. But yeah, I've got sources, people who remember what I used to be. Adrian studied her for a long moment. Then he turned and walked to the door. Wait, Chloe said. Where are you going? He paused, his hand on the doorknob. To verify your information. And if it checks out? Adrian glanced back at her, and for the first time she saw something that might have been respect in his eyes. Or maybe it was just calculation. Then you might actually be useful, he said. He left, locking the door behind him. Chloe sank onto the bed, her legs suddenly weak. She'd bought herself more time. How much? She didn't know. But it was something. She stared down at the phone still clutched in her hand. 1 hour, he'd said. She'd used 10 minutes. Her fingers moved before she could stop them, pulling up a search engine, typing in the name Marcus had given her. Elena Volkov. The results were sparse. A few mentions in business registries, a LinkedIn profile for a security consulting firm that looked legitimate enough on the surface. But Chloe had been a journalist long enough to recognize a shell when she saw one. She dug deeper, following digital breadcrumbs through cached pages and archived forums. Most of it was dead ends, but then she found something, a mention on an encrypted message board, buried in a thread about private military contractors. Someone asking about Volkov's rates. Someone else responding with a warning. Don't contact her unless you're serious. She doesn't do small jobs. Chloe's pulse quickened. She kept searching, her fingers flying over the screen, chasing every lead she could find. Most of it was rumor and speculation, but patterns started to emerge. Volkov's name kept appearing in connection with high-profile disappearances, unsolved murders. Incidents that looked like accidents but had too many coincidences to be random. And then she found the link. It was buried in a forum post from 3 weeks ago, written in Russian and run through a rough translation. Someone asking if Volkov was taking new clients for a significant project in New York, multiple targets, timeline mid-January. The response had been deleted, but the question was still there. Chloe's hands were shaking again. This wasn't just a rumor. This was real. The door opened. Adrian stepped back into the room, and this time he wasn't alone. The woman from earlier, the one who'd brought Chloe food, followed him in, along with a man Chloe hadn't seen before. Older, gray-haired, with the kind of face that had seen too much and stopped caring about most of it. Adrian looked at Chloe. "Show me what you found." She handed him the phone. He read through the search results in silence, his expression unreadable. The older man leaned over his shoulder, squinting at the screen. After a moment, Adrian handed the phone to him. "What do you think?" The older man scrolled through the pages, his jaw tight. "Volkov's real. If she's involved, this isn't some street-level crew trying to make a name for themselves. This is professional." "How professional?" "The kind that doesn't leave witnesses." Adrian's gaze shifted back to Chloe. "You found this in 10 minutes." It wasn't a question. Chloe nodded. "And you used to be a journalist." "Yeah." Adrian's eyes narrowed. "What happened?" Chloe's stomach twisted. "I wrote a story I shouldn't have." "About what?" "I don't know. I never got far enough to find out." The older man snorted. "Convenient." "It's the truth," Chloe said sharply. "I was investigating a financial network, shell companies, offshore accounts, the kind of thing that usually leads to tax evasion or money laundering. But the deeper I dug, the more people started pushing back. Anonymous threats, warning calls. Then my editor was killed in a car accident that wasn't an accident, and suddenly I was the one being accused of fabricating evidence." Adrian's expression didn't change. "And you expect me to believe you're innocent." "I don't care what you believe," Chloe said. "I'm telling you what happened." The room went quiet. Then Adrian turned to the older man. "Run her background, everything. I want to know who she talked to, who she pissed off, and whether any of it connects to this." The older man nodded and left. Adrian looked back at Chloe. "You're going to help me figure out who's behind this." It wasn't a request. Chloe straightened. "And if I do? Then maybe you get to keep breathing." "That's it? I risk my neck to help you, and all I get is survival?" Adrian's smile was cold. "You broke into my vehicle. You lied your way into my home. You're lucky survival is even on the table." Chloe's jaw tightened. "I want more than that. You're in no position to negotiate, aren't I?" She stood, meeting his eyes. "You need me. You wouldn't have given me that phone if you didn't. You wouldn't be wasting time verifying my information if you thought I was useless. So yeah, I think I am in a position to negotiate." For a moment, Adrian just stared at her. Then he laughed. It was a real laugh this time, low and genuinely amused, and it sent a shiver down Chloe's spine. "You've got guts," he said. "Stupid guts, but guts." "Is that a yes?" Adrian's smile faded. "You help me stop this, and I'll give you what you want. Protection, resources, a way back into the world you lost." Chloe's breath caught. "You can do that?" "I can do a lot of things." She wanted to believe him. She wanted it so badly it hurt. But she'd learned a long time ago that promises from powerful men were usually just pretty lies wrapped in expensive suits. "How do I know you won't just kill me when this is over?" she asked. Adrian stepped closer, his voice dropping to something almost soft. "You don't." The honesty of it was somehow worse than a lie. Chloe swallowed hard. "Then I guess I'll just have to make myself too valuable to kill." Adrian's smile returned, sharper this time. "Good luck with that." He turned to leave. "Wait," Chloe said. "If we're doing this, I need access. Real access, not just a phone for an hour. I need a computer, files, whatever intel you've got on the summit and the people attending." Adrian paused at the door. "You'll get what you need." "When?" "When I decide you've earned it." He left. The woman, who still hadn't introduced herself, lingered for a moment, her sharp eyes fixed on Chloe. "You're either very brave or very stupid," she said. Chloe met her gaze. "Probably both." The woman almost smiled. "Then you might survive this after all." She followed Adrian out, leaving Chloe alone again. Chloe sat back down on the bed, her mind racing. She'd done it. She'd bought herself more time, made herself useful enough to keep breathing, but the weight of what she'd just agreed to was starting to settle over her like a heavy blanket. She wasn't just trying to survive anymore. She was playing a game she didn't fully understand, with people who could crush her without blinking. And the worst part? She didn't have a choice but to keep playing. 2 hours later, the woman returned with a laptop. She set it on the desk without a word, then handed Chloe a folder. Thick, unmarked, the kind of thing that screamed classified. "Everything we have on the summit," the woman said. "Guest list, security protocols, venue layout. Mr. Versetti expects a full report by morning." Chloe blinked. "Morning? That's less than 12 hours. "Then you'd better get started." The woman left. Chloe opened the folder. Inside were dozens of documents, surveillance photos, financial records, dossiers on everyone expected to attend the summit. She recognized some of the names. Vincent Marconi, a shipping magnate with ties to half the ports on the East Coast. Dmitry Kuznetsov, a real estate developer who'd somehow avoided prosecution for money laundering 3 times in the last decade. Isabel Chen, CEO of a tech conglomerate that had its fingers in everything from AI development to private military contracts. And Adrian Versetti. His file was thinner than the others, which told Chloe more than 100 pages would have. He didn't leave a trail. He didn't make mistakes. She flipped through the guest list, cross-referencing names with the scraps of information Marcus had given her. Eastern European contractors, dark web job postings. Elena Volkov. There had to be a connection. She fired up the laptop and started digging. Hours blurred together. Chloe barely noticed the food the woman brought in at some point, barely registered when the pale gray light outside the window shifted to full daylight, and then back to dusk again. She was in the zone, the way she used to get when she was chasing a story that mattered. Everything else fell away. The exhaustion, the fear, the nagging voice in her head that kept reminding her she was gambling her life on something she wasn't even sure was real. All that mattered was the puzzle. She started mapping connections, financial links between the summit attendees, shared business interests, overlapping enemies. Patterns started to emerge, small ones at first, then bigger, clearer. Vincent Marconi and Dmitry Kuznetsov had both been involved in a shipping deal that went south 2 years ago. Millions of dollars disappeared and both men blamed each other. They'd been circling each other ever since, looking for an opening. Isabel Chen's company had recently acquired a cybersecurity firm that specialized in encrypted communications, the kind of firm that could, theoretically, intercept and decrypt messages between rival organizations. And Adrian Versetti? He was the linchpin. Everyone in that room had a reason to want him gone. He controlled too much, knew too much, had leverage on too many people. If someone wanted to destabilize the city's power structure, taking him out would be step one. Chloe sat back, rubbing her eyes. This wasn't just about money or territory. This was about control. Someone was trying to reset the board. The door opened. Adrian stepped inside, and Chloe almost didn't recognize him. He looked tired, not physically, but in a way that went deeper, like he'd been carrying something heavy for too long and was running out of strength to hold it up. "You've been working all night," he said. Chloe glanced at the window. The sky was starting to lighten again. "Yeah." Adrian walked over to the desk, looking at the scattered papers and open laptop. "Find anything?" "Maybe." She turned the laptop toward him, showing him the connection she'd mapped out. He leaned in, his eyes scanning the screen, and for a moment neither of them spoke. Then he straightened, his expression unreadable. "You think this is about me?" It wasn't a question. Chloe nodded. "You're the target. Everyone else is just collateral damage." Adrian was quiet for a long moment. Then he pulled out a chair and sat down across from her, his movements slow, deliberate. "Tell me what you know about Elena Volkov," he said. Chloe hesitated. "Not much. Just that she brokers high-level contracts and doesn't take small jobs." "She's more than that." Adrian's voice was flat. "She's a ghost. Former FSB, or so the rumors go. She disappeared from Russian intelligence about 10 years ago and resurfaced in the private sector. Since then, she's orchestrated some of the cleanest hits I've ever seen. No patterns, no signatures, nothing that can be traced back to her." "You sound like you've dealt with her before." "I've avoided her before," Adrian corrected. "There's a difference." "And now?" Now she's coming for me. The certainty in his voice made Chloe's stomach twist. How do you know? She asked. Adrian didn't answer right away. He just stared at the screen, his jaw tight. Because 3 days ago, one of my men was killed, he said finally. Clean shot, no witnesses, no evidence. It looked like a random mugging, but I know better. It was a message. A message saying what? Adrian's eyes met hers, and in them Chloe saw something she hadn't expected. Fear. Not the kind that made you freeze, but the kind that made you dangerous. That she's already here, he said quietly, and she's just getting started. Chloe stared at Adrian, her mind trying to process what he'd just said. Elena Volkov was already here, already moving, already killing, which meant they weren't preparing for a threat anymore. They were in the middle of one. Why didn't you tell me this earlier? Chloe asked, her voice sharper than she intended. Adrian's expression didn't change. Because I needed to know if you were feeding me bullshit or if you actually had something. And now? Now I know you're either very good at your job or very lucky. He leaned back in the chair, his eyes never leaving hers. Either way, you're involved. Chloe's chest tightened. Who was he? The man who was killed. Someone I trusted. The way he said it made it clear that was all she was going to get. She looked back at the laptop screen, at the web of connections she'd spent all night mapping. If Volkov's already making moves, then the summit isn't the starting point. It's the endgame. Meaning? Meaning she's been planning this for months. The hit on your man was just the opening shot. She's testing your defenses, seeing how you react, looking for weaknesses. Adrian's jaw tightened. I don't have weaknesses. Everyone has weaknesses. Not ones she can exploit. Chloe almost laughed. The arrogance should have been infuriating, but there was something almost impressive about it, like he genuinely believed he was untouchable. You're wrong, she said quietly. You have at least one. And what's that? You think you're smarter than everyone else in the room. For a second, Adrian's expression went completely blank. Then he smiled. It wasn't a nice smile. And you think you know me after 2 days? I know men like you. Do you? It wasn't a question. It was a challenge. Chloe held his gaze. You're used to being in control. Used to people doing what you say because they're either loyal or terrified. But Volkov doesn't care about your reputation. She doesn't care how many people you've bought or buried. To her, you're just another target. And the second you start thinking you're too smart to get hit, that's when she'll pull the trigger. The room went very quiet. Adrian studied her for a long moment, and Chloe couldn't tell if she'd just crossed a line or earned a sliver of respect. Maybe both. You've got a mouth on you, he said finally. Yeah, I've been told. It's going to get you killed. Probably. Adrian almost smiled again. Then he stood, pulling his phone from his pocket. Come with me. Chloe blinked. Where? You wanted access. You've got it. He didn't wait for her to respond. He just walked out, leaving the door open behind him. Chloe grabbed the laptop and followed. They moved through a series of hallways she hadn't seen before, wider, more opulent, with marble floors and artwork that probably cost more than most people made in a year. Guards were stationed at regular intervals, watching her with the kind of blank professionalism that made her skin crawl. Adrian led her to a heavy steel door at the end of a corridor. He pressed his thumb to a scanner and the door clicked open, revealing a staircase leading down. What is this? Chloe asked. War room. He descended the stairs without looking back. Chloe hesitated for half a second, then followed. The room at the bottom was massive. Cold fluorescent lights. Banks of monitors covering one wall, each one showing different camera feeds from around the city. A long table in the center, surrounded by chairs. Maps spread out across every available surface. It looked like something out of a military command center. 3 people were already inside. The older man from before, the one who'd verified her background, was hunched over a laptop, his fingers flying across the keyboard. The woman who'd been bringing Chloe food stood near the monitors, arms crossed, watching the feeds with the focus of a predator. And a younger man, maybe late 20s, was pacing near the table, talking rapidly into a phone. They all looked up when Adrian entered. Status? Adrian said. The older man didn't look away from his screen. 2 more incidents overnight. One of Marconi's warehouses was hit, fire, but it was accelerant-based. And Kuznetsov's head of security was found dead in his apartment. Single gunshot, close range, No signs of forced entry. Adrian's expression darkened. She's escalating. She's sending a message, the woman said. Her voice was clipped, precise. She wants everyone at the summit nervous, paranoid, looking over their shoulders. It's working, the younger man muttered, hanging up his phone. Half the guest list is talking about pulling out. They won't, Adrian said. Too much money on the table, too many deals that can't wait. Or they're too stubborn to admit they're scared, Chloe said. Everyone turned to look at her. The older man's eyes narrowed. Who the hell is this? An asset, Adrian said. Chloe Carter, former journalist. She's the one who flagged Volkov. The woman's gaze raked over Chloe, assessing. The fabricator? Chloe's jaw tightened. I didn't fabricate anything. That's not what the courts said. The courts were bought. The woman's expression didn't change. Convenient. Enough, Adrian cut in. He gestured to the older man. This is Vincent, head of my intelligence operations. Then to the woman. Irina, security. Finally, the younger man. Marco, communications. None of them looked particularly thrilled to meet her. Chloe set the laptop down on the table. I've been mapping connections between the summit attendees. If Volkov's targeting multiple people, there has to be a common thread, something that ties them all together. Vincent snorted. They're all rich and powerful. That's the thread. It's more specific than that, Chloe insisted. She opened the laptop, pulling up the files she'd been working on. Marconi and Kuznetsov both lost money in the same shipping deal 2 years ago. Isabel Chen's company just acquired tech that could intercept encrypted communications. And Adrian is the one holding all the cards, Irina finished. We know. Chloe looked at Adrian. Do you have enemies in common with the other attendees? I have enemies in common with everyone. That's not helpful. It's the truth. Chloe bit back a curse. She turned to Vincent. What about financial records, shell companies, offshore accounts? Anything that connects these people beyond the obvious? Vincent's fingers paused over his keyboard. You think this is about money? I think everything's about money until it's about power. And sometimes it's both. Vincent exchanged a look with Adrian. Then he pulled up a new screen, lines of data scrolling past. There's a network. Offshore holdings tied to a parent company registered in the Caymans. About 6 months ago, someone started buying up shares, small amounts, spread across dozens of subsidiaries, hard to track unless you know what you're looking for. And you know what you're looking for, Chloe said. I'm good at my job. Who's doing the buying? Vincent's jaw tightened. We don't know. The paper trail's a mess. But the parent company? It's linked to at least 4 people on the summit guest list. Chloe's pulse quickened. Which 4? Vincent rattled off names. Marconi, Kuznetsov, Chen, and one more, Thomas Reeves, a financier she'd seen mentioned in passing but hadn't dug into yet. What about Adrian? Chloe asked. Vincent shook his head. He's clean. No ties to the parent company. Adrian's expression was unreadable. So someone's consolidating assets, building a power base. Or setting up a takeover, Chloe said. You take out the competition, absorb their holdings, and suddenly you control half the city's black market infrastructure. Irina stepped forward. And Volkov's the weapon. Exactly. The room fell silent. Then Marco spoke up, his voice tense. If that's true, then the summit's not just a hit, it's a purge. Adrian's phone buzzed. He glanced at the screen, his expression hardening. We've got a problem. Vincent looked up. What kind of problem? The kind that's already inside. Adrian turned to Irina. Run a full sweep. Everyone on my payroll. I want backgrounds, financials, communications, everything. If Volkov planted someone here, I want them found. Irina nodded and left. Chloe's stomach twisted. You think there's a mole? I think Volkov doesn't work alone, Adrian said. And I think she's too good to rely on luck, which means someone's feeding her information. How do you know it's not me? The words came out before Chloe could stop them. Adrian looked at her, and for a moment the room felt like it was holding its breath. Because if it was you, he said quietly, you'd already be dead. Chloe didn't know if that was reassuring or terrifying. Probably both. The next 3 days were a blur. Chloe barely slept. She spent every waking hour in the war room, digging through files, cross-referencing data, chasing leads that went nowhere and a few that went somewhere useful. Vincent was a relentless taskmaster, demanding more detail, more proof, more connections. Marco kept the phones ringing, fielding calls from nervous associates and paranoid allies. And Irina ran sweeps that turned up nothing, which only made everyone more tense. Adrian was everywhere and nowhere. He'd disappear for hours, then show up in the middle of the night with new intel or a fresh body count. Every time Chloe saw him, he looked a little more worn, a little more dangerous. The summit was 2 days away, and they still didn't know who was pulling Volkov's strings. Chloe was hunched over the laptop, her eyes burning from staring at the screen too long, when Vincent dropped a folder on the table in front of her. "Found something," he said. She looked up. "What?" "Thomas Reeves, the financier. He's been moving money, a lot of it. Encrypted transfers to accounts we can't trace, but the timing matches up with Volkov's known movements over the last 6 months." Chloe's heart skipped. "You think he's bankrolling her?" "I think it's a hell of a coincidence if he's not." She flipped open the folder. Inside were bank statements, wire transfer records, screenshots of encrypted messages that had been partially decoded. The amounts were staggering. Millions flowing out of Reeves's accounts into a web of shell companies and offshore holdings. "This is it," Chloe breathed. "This is the proof." Vincent's expression was grim. "Maybe. Or maybe Reeves is just the middleman. Either way, he's involved. Which makes him a target." Chloe looked up sharply. "You think Volkov will go after him too?" "I think if he knows too much, he's a liability. And Volkov doesn't leave liabilities." Chloe's mind raced. If Reeves was the money man, then taking him out before the summit would cut off the funding, maybe even throw the whole operation into chaos. But it would also mean losing their best lead. "We need to get to him first," she said. Vincent raised an eyebrow. "We? You know what I mean." "Do I?" Before Chloe could respond, Adrian walked in. He looked like he hadn't slept in days, his shirt sleeves rolled up, a faint bruise darkening along his jawline. "What happened to you?" Chloe asked before she could stop herself. Adrian ignored the question. "Reeves is dead." The room went cold. Vincent cursed under his breath. "When?" 2 hours ago, found in his penthouse. Single gunshot to the head, same as the others. Chloe's stomach dropped. "She's cleaning house." "She's tying up loose ends," Adrian corrected. He pulled out his phone, showing them a photo. Chloe's breath caught. The image was grainy, clearly taken from a security camera, but it showed a woman entering the building. Tall, dark hair, sunglasses, moving with the kind of confidence that came from knowing exactly what you were doing. "Is that her?" Chloe whispered. "That's her," Adrian confirmed. Irina leaned in, studying the image. "She's not even trying to hide." "She doesn't need to," Adrian said. "By the time anyone realizes what's happening, she's already gone." Chloe stared at the photo, her mind spinning. Volkov wasn't just good. She was playing a completely different game, at every move calculated, every step planned. And now, with Reeves dead, their best lead was gone. "We're running out of time," Marco said, his voice tight. "We're running out of options," Vincent muttered. Adrian's jaw tightened. "No, we still have one." Everyone looked at him. "We use the summit as bait," he said. Chloe's eyes widened. "You want to let the hit happen?" "I want to control it. If Volkov's planning to make her move at the summit, then that's where we stop her. We fortify the location, lock down every entry point, and wait for her to come to us." "That's insane," Chloe said. "You'd be putting everyone in that room at risk." "They're already at risk. At least this way we have a chance to catch her." "Or you all die." Adrian's gaze locked onto hers. "Then I guess you'd better make sure that doesn't happen." Chloe's breath caught. "What?" "You're good at finding patterns, at seeing things other people miss. I need you at the summit. I'm not security. I'm not—" "You're an asset," Adrian interrupted. "And right now you're the only one who's been right about what's coming. So yeah, you're going to be there." Chloe wanted to argue, wanted to tell him he was out of his mind for thinking she could do anything useful in the middle of a firefight. But the truth was, she didn't have anywhere else to go. And maybe, just maybe, this was her chance to prove she wasn't just a washed-up journalist who'd lost everything. Maybe this was her chance to be something more. "Fine," she said. "I'll go." Adrian nodded. Good, because the summit's tomorrow night. The next 24 hours passed in a haze of preparation. Adrian's team moved like a well-oiled machine. Irina coordinated security, deploying personnel to the summit venue, a private estate on the outskirts of the city, isolated and heavily guarded. Vincent set up surveillance, hacking into every camera within a 2-mile radius. Marco handled communications, making sure every attendee knew the new protocols. And Chloe? Chloe studied everything she could get her hands on. Floor plans, guest lists, backgrounds on every single person who'd be in that room. She memorized faces, names, connections. She looked for patterns, for anything that might give them an edge. She barely noticed when Adrian sat down across from her, a cup of coffee in his hand. "You should sleep," he said. Chloe didn't look up from the file she was reading. "So should you." "I don't sleep before operations." "Why not?" "Because the second I close my eyes, I start thinking about all the ways it can go wrong." Chloe finally looked at him. He looked exhausted. Human, almost. The polished veneer cracked just enough to show the man underneath. "You're scared," she said quietly. Adrian's expression didn't change. "I'm careful." "That's not the same thing." "No," he agreed. "It's not." He took a sip of coffee, his eyes distant. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then Chloe asked the question she'd been holding back for days. "Why are you doing this?" Adrian frowned. "Doing what?" "This. All of it. You could have killed me the second I climbed into your car. You could have dumped my body in the river and no one would have cared. But you didn't. You gave me a chance. Why?" Adrian was quiet for a long time. Then he said, "Because you reminded me of someone." "Who?" "Someone who didn't know when to quit." Chloe almost smiled. "And where are they now?" "Dead." The word hung in the air like a weight. Chloe's chest tightened. "I'm sorry." Adrian shook his head. "Don't be. They made their choices. Just like you're making yours." He stood, setting the coffee cup down on the table. "Get some rest," he said. "Tomorrow's going to be a long day." He left before Chloe could respond. She sat there for a while, staring at the empty doorway, her mind turning over everything he'd said. Someone who didn't know when to quit. Yeah, that sounded about right. But the summit was held in a sprawling estate that looked like it had been plucked from a different century. Stone walls, iron gates, manicured gardens buried under a fresh layer of snow. The kind of place that screamed old money and older secrets. Chloe arrived with Adrian's security team, tucked into the back of an armored SUV. Irina sat across from her, checking her weapon with the casual efficiency of someone who'd done it 1,000 times. "Stay close to me," Irina said without looking up. "Don't wander. Don't talk to anyone unless I tell you to. And if shooting starts, you hit the ground and stay there." "Got it," Chloe said, her mouth dry. The SUV rolled through the gates and up a long driveway. Other vehicles were already parked near the main entrance. Sleek sedans, armored trucks, even a helicopter perched on a landing pad near the east wing. This wasn't just a meeting. This was a show of force. They got out and Chloe followed Irina inside. The entrance hall was massive, all marble and crystal chandeliers, with armed guards stationed at every door. People milled around in expensive suits and dresses, talking in low voices, their eyes constantly moving. Chloe recognized faces from the files she'd studied. Marconi, broad-shouldered and scowling. Kuznetsov, lean and sharp-eyed. Isabel Chen, poised and untouchable in a tailored black suit. And Adrian. He stood near the center of the room, talking to a man Chloe didn't recognize. But even in a room full of powerful people, Adrian commanded attention. It wasn't just the way he carried himself. It was the way everyone else seemed to orbit around him, like planets around a star. Irina led Chloe to a side room, a smaller space set up with monitors and comm equipment. Vincent was already there, his eyes glued to a dozen different camera feeds. "Anything?" Irina asked. "Nothing yet," Vincent muttered. "But she's here. I can feel it." Chloe's stomach twisted. She moved closer to the monitors, watching the feeds. Exterior cameras showed the grounds, the gates, the perimeter. Interior cameras covered every hallway, every room. Everything looked normal. But normal didn't mean safe. How long until the main session starts? Chloe asked. Vincent glanced at his watch. 20 minutes. 20 minutes. Chloe's pulse hammered in her ears. She turned back to the monitors, her eyes scanning every frame, looking for something, anything, that didn't belong. And then she saw it. A flicker, just for a second. One of the exterior cameras went dark, then came back online. Did you see that? She asked, pointing at the screen. Vincent leaned in, frowning. See what? That camera, it glitched. Cameras glitch all the time. Not like that. Vincent pulled up this feed, rewinding it. The camera had gone dark for exactly 3 seconds. Then it came back, showing the same empty courtyard as before. But something about it felt wrong. Check the timestamp, Chloe said. Vincent did. His expression darkened. It's off by 2 seconds. Irina stepped closer. What does that mean? It means someone looped the feed, Chloe said, her voice tight. They replaced those 3 seconds with footage from earlier, which means she's inside, Vincent finished. The room went very still. Then all hell broke loose. Irina was already moving, her hand flying to the radio clipped to her vest. Code black, she barked into the comm. Hostile inside the perimeter. Lock down all entry points. No one in or out. Vincent's fingers flew across the keyboard, pulling up every interior camera feed. I'm scanning for anomalies. If she tampered with one camera, she might have... There, Chloe interrupted, pointing at another screen. A service hallway. Empty, according to the feed. But the timestamp was off again, just by a few seconds. But enough. She's using pre-recorded loops to cover her movements, Chloe said, her voice tight. You're not going to find her on the cameras. She's already thought of that. Irina swore in what sounded like Russian. Then how do we... An explosion rocked the building. Not close, but loud enough to shake the walls and send the crystal chandelier in the main hall swaying. Chloe stumbled, catching herself against the desk. Alarms started blaring, high-pitched and relentless. Vincent was already pulling up exterior feeds. West Wing. Something just blew in the... Another explosion. This one closer. The lights flickered. She's hitting the generator, Vincent said, his face pale. If we lose power... The lights went out. For 3 seconds, the world was nothing but darkness and the shriek of alarms. Then emergency lighting kicked in, bathing everything in dim red. Chloe's heart was hammering so hard she could feel it in her throat. Through the doorway, she could hear shouting from the main hall, panic spreading like wildfire. Irina grabbed Chloe's arm, her grip iron tight. Stay with me. Do not leave my side. They moved into the hallway. People were running now, security personnel shouting orders, guests scattering in every direction. Through the chaos, Chloe caught a glimpse of Adrian. He stood near the center of the main hall, completely still, his eyes scanning the crowd with the focus of a predator. He wasn't panicking, he was hunting. Irina pulled Chloe toward him, cutting through the crowd with ruthless efficiency. They reached Adrian just as Marco appeared at his side, phone pressed to his ear, face white. 3 entry points breached, Marco said rapidly. West Wing, East Corridor, and... Gunfire erupted somewhere above them. Everyone hit the ground. Chloe felt Irina's hand on the back of her head, forcing her down. Her cheek pressed against cold marble, her breath coming in short gasps. The sound of automatic weapons fire was deafening, echoing through the grand hall like thunder trapped in a cage. The gunfire stopped. Then screaming started. Adrian was on his feet before the echoes faded. How many shooters? Unknown, Irina said, scanning the room with predatory focus. At least 3, maybe more. They're staff, Vincent's voice crackled over the radio. I'm watching the feeds. The shooters are dressed as waiters, security. They've been here the whole time. Chloe's blood turned to ice. Volkov hadn't just infiltrated the building. She'd planted people inside days ago, maybe weeks. Waiting, watching, living among them like wolves in sheep's clothing. Get everyone to the safe room, Adrian ordered. Now! Irina nodded and started moving, barking commands into her radio. Guards converged, forming a protective perimeter around the guests and herding them toward a reinforced door at the back of the hall. But not everyone was moving towards safety. Chloe saw Marconi going the opposite direction, flanked by his own men, their weapons drawn. His face was twisted with rage and fear in equal measure. Kuznetsov was doing the same, disappearing through a side exit with his security team. The carefully orchestrated evacuation was falling apart as everyone defaulted to their own protocols. their own survival instincts overriding any sense of collective security. Adrian saw it too. His jaw tightened. They're scattering. We need them together. They don't trust each other enough for that, Chloe said, her voice hoarse. Then they're going to die alone. More gunfire, this time from multiple directions. The shooters were moving through the building like ghosts, picking off targets with surgical precision. Chloe could hear the distinctive crack of rifles, the rapid staccato of submachine guns, the heavy boom of shotguns. This wasn't random violence. This was coordinated, professional, methodical. A man in a suit, someone Chloe recognized from the guest list but couldn't name, stumbled backward into the main hall, clutching his chest. Blood spread across his white shirt in a dark bloom that looked almost black in the emergency lighting. He collapsed before anyone could reach him, his eyes already going glassy. Irina grabbed Chloe again. Move! They ran. The safe room was through a series of corridors, each one more narrow than the last. Emergency lighting cast everything in hellish red, turning shadows into threats and making every corner a potential ambush point. People pushed and shoved, driven by pure survival instinct. Someone fell and was nearly trampled before a guard hauled them back up. A woman was crying, her makeup running down her face in dark streaks. A man kept repeating, "This can't be happening," over and over like a broken mantra. Chloe's lungs burned. Her legs felt like they were made of lead. But Irina's grip never loosened, dragging her forward even when she stumbled. Behind them, she could hear more gunfire, more screaming, the sounds of a massacre unfolding in real time. They burst through the final doorway into a large, windowless room, reinforced walls, a heavy steel door that looked like it belonged in a bank vault. The safe room looked like it could survive a direct missile strike. Maybe it would have to. Inside, the crowd pressed together, maybe 30 people, all of them looking terrified or furious or both. Isabel Chen stood near the back, her face composed but her hands shaking slightly. She was trying to maintain her corporate mask, but cracks were showing. Kuznetsov was there too, arguing with one of his guards in rapid-fire Russian, his voice getting louder with each exchange. But Marconi was missing. Adrian scanned the room, his expression dark. "Where's Marconi?" No one answered. A few people looked away. Someone cleared their throat nervously. "Damn it," Adrian muttered. He turned to Irina. "Lock it down. No one leaves." "What about you?" "I'm going back out." "The hell you are," Irina snapped. "You stay here. You stay alive. You go out there." "Marconi's a dead man if we don't get to him first," Adrian interrupted. "And if he dies, this whole thing falls apart. The fragile peace we've been maintaining? It's gone. Every family, every organization in this city goes to war. Let it fall apart. You're the primary target. Which is exactly why I need to move." Adrian's voice was steel. "She's expecting me to hide, so I won't." Chloe stepped forward before she could stop herself. "That's suicide." Adrian's eyes locked onto hers. "You have a better idea?" She did, sort of. Her mind was racing, pulling together fragments of everything she'd learned over the past few days. The patterns, the connections, the way Volkov operated. "Volkov's not working alone," Chloe said quickly. "She has people inside, but she also has someone calling the shots. Someone who knows this building, knows the security protocols, knows exactly how everyone would react." Adrian's expression sharpened. The mole. Not just a mole, someone high up, someone with complete access. Chloe's voice gained strength as the pieces fell into place. Think about it. Who knew the exact timing of the summit? Who had access to the security schedules? Who could plant people inside without raising suspicion? "That could be half a dozen people," Vincent said over the radio. "No," Chloe insisted. "It has to be someone Adrian trusts completely. Someone who's been with him long enough to know his habits, his weaknesses, his blind spots." Adrian's jaw was tight enough to shatter. "What are you saying?" Chloe met his eyes. "I'm saying it's your consigliere." The room went dead silent. Irina's face went pale. "What?" "Dante," Chloe said. "It's Dante." "You're talking about Dante," Irina said, her voice low and dangerous. "Adrian's second in command. The man who's been with him for 15 years. The man who took a bullet for him in Chicago." "Where is he right now?" Chloe challenged. No one answered, because no one knew. Adrian's expression was unreadable, but Chloe could see the calculations happening behind his eyes. The way he was reviewing every interaction, every decision, every conversation with fresh suspicion. "If you're wrong," Adrian started. "Then kill me yourself," Chloe said. "But if I'm right, he's the one directing the shooters. He's the one who knows where everyone's going, and he's the one who's going to make sure you don't walk out of here alive." Adrian stared at her for a long moment. The air in the room felt thick enough to choke on. Then he pulled his gun. "Vincent," he said into his radio, "find Dante. Now!" Static crackled. Then Vincent's voice, tense and tight. "Already on it. Pulling his location from— Wait, his tracker's offline." "Since when?" "Since about 10 minutes before the first explosion." Adrian's expression went cold. The kind of cold that made Chloe's survival instincts scream at her to back away. She'd seen Adrian angry before. She'd seen him calculating, ruthless, dangerous, but this was different. This was personal. "He's here," Adrian said quietly. "He's in the building." Irina pulled her weapon. "Then we find him." "No." Adrian turned to her. "You stay here. Protect these people. I'll handle Dante." "You can't go alone." "I'm not." Adrian looked at Chloe. She blinked. "What?" "You're coming with me." "Are you insane?" Irina snapped. "She's a liability." "She's the only one who saw it," Adrian interrupted. "She's the only one who put the pieces together, which means she might be the only one who can help me stay ahead of him." Chloe's heart was pounding. "I don't know how to shoot. I don't know how to—" "You know how to think," Adrian said. "That's what I need." He was already moving toward the door. Chloe hesitated for half a second, then she followed. Behind her, she heard Irina swearing viciously in Russian, and someone else, maybe Kuznetsov, saying something about lunacy and death wish. They were probably right. The corridors were a war zone. Bodies lay crumpled in doorways, their blood pooling on marble floors that had probably cost more than most people made in a lifetime. Bullet holes pocked the walls in neat lines where automatic weapons had stitched patterns of death. A painting, something old and probably priceless, hung crooked on the wall, torn by shrapnel. Adrian moved through it all like a ghost, his weapon up, his movements precise and controlled. He didn't flinch at the bodies, didn't slow down to check if anyone was alive. He'd seen worse, done worse probably. Chloe stayed close, her breath coming in short gasps. Every shadow looked like a threat. Every sound made her flinch. Her hands were shaking so badly she had to clench them into fists to stop them. "Where would he go?" Adrian asked, his voice low. Chloe forced her brain to work past the fear. "Somewhere he can see everything, coordinate the attack. He'd need access to communications, cameras. The security office," Adrian said. "Second floor, east wing." They moved. The building felt like it was dying around them. Emergency lights flickered. Somewhere in the distance she could hear more gunfire, more screaming. The attack wasn't slowing down. If anything, it was intensifying. The shooters were pushing deeper into the building, systematically clearing rooms. They reached a stairwell. Adrian cleared it with quick efficiency, moving up the steps with his weapon raised, checking corners with the practiced ease of someone who'd done this 1,000 times before. Chloe followed, her legs burning. Her lungs felt like they were on fire. Halfway up, Adrian stopped. Chloe nearly ran into him. "What?" He held up a hand, cutting her off. Then she heard it too. Footsteps. Above them. Coming down. Multiple sets, heavy boots on concrete. Adrian gestured for her to move back against the wall. She pressed herself into the shadows, her heart hammering so hard she was sure whoever was coming could hear it. 3 men appeared, all dressed in black tactical gear, all carrying automatic weapons with suppressors attached. They moved with military precision, weapons up, checking angles. They didn't see Adrian until it was too late. He moved like violence incarnate. The first man went down with a bullet through his throat before he could even raise his weapon. The sound was barely a whisper. Adrian's gun had a suppressor too. The second managed to get a shot off, wild and panicked, the bullet sparking off the wall inches from Chloe's head. Adrian put 2 rounds in his chest center mass. The third tried to run. Adrian shot him in the leg. The man screamed, a raw sound of agony that echoed up the stairwell. He collapsed on the stairs, his weapon clattering away. Adrian was on him in seconds, dragging him up by his tactical vest, slamming him against the wall hard enough to crack the concrete. "Who sent you?" Adrian's voice was utterly calm. The man spat blood. Go to hell. Adrian pressed the gun against his kneecap. Wrong answer. Wait. Oh. Who sent you? Dante, the man gasped, his face twisted in pain. He's paying us. Said you'd be in the safe room. We were supposed to hit it after the others were cleared. How many of you? 12, maybe 15. I don't know, man. I just take orders. Where's Dante now? Security office, second floor. He's running everything from there. Adrian shot him. Chloe flinched, her stomach twisting. The man slumped to the ground, his eyes going blank. 3 bodies on the stairs now. 3 men who'd woken up this morning with no idea they'd be dead by nightfall. Adrian didn't even look back. He just kept climbing. Chloe followed on shaking legs, forcing herself not to look at the bodies, not to think about the fact that she was walking through a building full of corpses, not to think about how easily she could join them. They reached the second floor. The corridor was empty, but the door to the security office was ajar. Light spilled out into the hallway, cutting through the red emergency lighting. Adrian approached slowly, his weapon up. Chloe stayed behind him, every nerve screaming at her to run, to get as far away from this place as possible. But she didn't. Adrian kicked the door open. The office was a mess. Monitors shattered, glass scattered across the floor like broken teeth. Equipment smashed, wires hanging loose. And in the center of it all, sitting calmly in a chair like he was waiting for a business meeting, was a man Chloe had only seen in photographs. Dante. He was older than she'd expected. Late 50s maybe, with silver hair that was perfectly styled despite the chaos. He was dressed in an expensive suit, navy blue, tailored to perfection. Not a hair out of place, not a drop of blood on him, like he'd just stepped out of a boardroom instead of orchestrating a massacre. He smiled when he saw Adrian. Took you long enough, Dante said. His voice was smooth, cultured, the kind of voice you'd expect from a college professor or a wine connoisseur. Adrian's gun didn't waver. Stand up. Or what? You'll shoot me? Dante's smile widened. We both know you won't. Not until you get answers. Try me. Dante stood slowly, his hands raised in mock surrender. His movements were leisurely, unconcerned, like he had all the time in the world. 15 years, Adrian, Dante said. 15 years I stood by your side. Cleaned up your messes. Made your enemies disappear. Took a bullet for you in Chicago. And how did you repay me? By making you rich. By making me your dog. Dante's voice lost its cultured edge, turning hard and bitter. Every decision, every move, every dollar that came through, it all went through you. I was just the errand boy, the fixer, the one who got his hands dirty so you could stay clean, never the king, always the servant. So you sold me out. I upgraded. Dante gestured to the broken monitors around them. Volkov's good, but she's just the weapon. The real power? That's the people who hired her, the ones who saw what you couldn't, that this city doesn't need a dozen little tyrants fighting over scraps like dogs. It needs consolidation, unity, one voice making the decisions. Yours. Why not? Dante's eyes glittered. I've earned it. I've bled for it. I've killed for it. And what have you done? Sat on your throne, making pronouncements, treating everyone around you like pieces on a chessboard? Well, guess what, Adrian? The board just flipped. Adrian's jaw tightened. Where is she? Who? Volkov? Dante laughed. It was a cold sound, devoid of any real humor. Everywhere, nowhere. That's the beauty of it, Adrian. You can't stop what's already in motion. She's a ghost. By the time you figure out where she is, she'll already be gone. And so will you. Where is she? Dante's smile turned vicious. You're asking the wrong question. Adrian stepped closer, his gun inches from Dante's face. Then what's the right question? How many people are about to die because you were too arrogant to see what was right in front of you? How many bodies are going to pile up tonight because Adrian Versetti thought he was untouchable? Dante's voice dropped to almost a whisper. That's the question you should be asking. A sound behind them. Footsteps. Fast. Chloe spun around. A woman stood in the doorway. Tall, dark-haired, dressed in black tactical gear. The same woman from the security footage. Even without seeing her face clearly, Chloe knew. Elena Volkov. She raised her gun. Adrian was already moving, grabbing Chloe and throwing them both behind a desk as bullets tore through the air. Wood splintered. Monitors exploded in showers of glass and sparks. Chloe's ears rang from the noise, so loud in the confined space that it felt like her skull was being split open. Then silence. Chloe's hands were shaking so badly she could barely breathe. Adrian was already up, returning fire, but Volkov was gone. Vanished like smoke. Like she'd never been there at all. And so was Dante. "Damn it!" Adrian snarled. He grabbed Chloe's arm, hauling her to her feet. "Move!" They ran. Behind them, more gunfire erupted. Volkov's team was closing in, flooding the corridor. Adrian fired blind over his shoulder, not bothering to aim, just buying them seconds. Precious seconds that might mean the difference between living and dying. They burst into a side hallway. Adrian slammed a door shut behind them, throwing the lock. It wouldn't hold long. Nothing would hold against what was coming, but it didn't need to. "This way," he said, pulling her toward a service stairwell. They descended into darkness. No emergency lights down here. Just the sound of their ragged breathing and the distant echo of gunfire getting closer. "Where are we going?" Chloe gasped. "Out." "Out where?" "Anywhere but here." They hit the ground floor and kept moving. Adrian led her through a maze of storage rooms and maintenance corridors, areas she hadn't even known existed. He moved like he'd memorized every inch of the building, every escape route, every bolt hole. They emerged into the main kitchen, industrial-sized ovens, stainless steel counters, everything gleaming and untouched. Like the massacre upstairs was happening in a different world entirely. Adrian moved to a walk-in freezer, pulling it open. Inside, past the hanging meat and frost-covered shelves, was another door. "Secret exit?" Chloe asked, her voice hoarse. "Old bootlegger tunnel," Adrian said. "Prohibition era. Runs under the estate and comes up about half a mile away. The original owners were into smuggling, made it easier to move product without being seen." He stepped inside. Chloe followed. The cold hit her like a fist. Her breath misted in the air. Adrian moved through the freezer quickly, pushing past frozen carcasses to reach the back wall. He found a latch, hidden behind a rack of supplies, and pulled. A section of the wall swung inward, darkness beyond, deep and absolute. Adrian pulled out a small flashlight, clicking it on. The beam cut through the black, revealing a narrow tunnel carved into rock and earth. The walls were rough, the ceiling low enough that Adrian had to duck slightly. "Ladies first," he said. Chloe almost laughed. The absurdity of it, politeness in the middle of running for their lives. Then she stepped inside. The tunnel was freezing and damp, water dripping from the ceiling. The walls were close enough to touch on both sides. Chloe's claustrophobia kicked in immediately, her chest tightening, but she forced herself to keep moving, one foot in front of the other. Don't think about the tons of earth above you. Don't think about what happens if this tunnel collapses. Just move. Behind her, Adrian closed the hidden door. They were alone in the dark. They walked for what felt like hours, but was probably only 15 minutes. Chloe's legs ached, her lungs burned from the cold air, but she didn't stop. Finally, the tunnel started to slope upward. Fresh air hit her face, sharp and biting. Real air, not the stale dampness of the underground. They emerged into a small maintenance shed, half buried in snow. Adrian pushed the door open and they stumbled out into the night. The estate was behind them, maybe half a mile away, lit up like a bonfire. Smoke rose into the dark sky. Even from here, Chloe could hear the faint pop of gunfire, the wail of sirens. "We need to keep moving," Adrian said. "They'll realize we're gone soon." "Where do we go?" Adrian's expression was hard. "We find transportation, regroup, and then—" A sound cut through the night. An engine. Close. Adrian's hand went to his gun, but before he could draw, headlights cut through the darkness. A vehicle, an SUV, came roaring through the snow toward them. Chloe's heart lurched. "Adrian!" The SUV skidded to a stop 10 feet away. The driver's door opened. Vincent stepped out, his face grim. "Get in. Now!" They didn't argue. Chloe climbed into the back seat. Adrian slid in beside her. Vincent gunned the engine and they tore off into the night, snow spraying behind them. "How did you find us?" Adrian asked. "Tracked your phone," Vincent said, his eyes on the road. "Figured you'd use the tunnel. It's what I would have done." "The safe room?" "Secure. Irina's holding it. But we lost people, Adrian. At least 6 confirmed dead before they got the doors sealed. Maybe more. Adrian's jaw clenched. Dante? Gone. Volkov too. They vanished right after you did. My guess is they had an exit plan ready. Chloe's chest felt tight. Where are they going? That's what we need to figure out, Vincent said. He glanced in the rearview mirror, his eyes meeting Chloe's. Because whatever Dante's planning, the summit was just the opening act. They drove for 20 minutes, winding through back roads and abandoned industrial areas, before pulling into a rundown warehouse. Vincent killed the engine and they got out. Inside, the warehouse was freezing and mostly empty, except for a few crates and a folding table with a laptop set up. Marco was there, hunched over the computer, his face pale and drawn. Tell me you've got something, Adrian said without preamble. Marco looked up. His eyes were red-rimmed, exhausted. Maybe. I pulled Dante's financials. He's been moving money for months. Offshore accounts, encrypted transfers, the whole 9 yards. But there's one transaction that stands out. 3 days ago, he wired $2 million to a private airfield upstate. He's running, Vincent said. Not yet, Chloe interjected. Everyone looked at her. If he was running, he'd already be gone. He's waiting for something. For what? Adrian asked. Chloe's mind raced, pulling together everything she knew. The pattern of attacks, the timing, the way Dante had been sitting in that office like he had all the time in the world. For confirmation, she said slowly. He doesn't know if the hit on you worked. He needs to make sure you're dead before he disappears. Otherwise, you'll hunt him for the rest of his life. Adrian's expression darkened. Then we let him think I am. Vincent raised an eyebrow. You want to fake your death? I want him to get comfortable. Make a mistake. If he thinks he won, he'll surface, get sloppy, and that's when we take him. And if he doesn't buy it? Marco asked. Adrian's smile was sharp and cold. Then we go to him. Marco's fingers flew across the keyboard. I can put together something. Leak it through channels Dante would be monitoring. Make it look like the hit succeeded. Do it, Adrian said. But we need to move fast. Every minute we wait is another minute he has to cover his tracks. What about Volkov? Chloe asked. Even if we get Dante, she's still out there. One problem at a time, Adrian said, but the way he said it made it clear he hadn't forgotten about the woman who'd almost killed them. First Dante. Then we deal with her. Irina's voice crackled over the radio. Adrian, we've got a situation. Adrian keyed his radio. What kind of situation? The kind where someone just tried to breach the safe room. We held them off, but they're regrouping. We can't stay here much longer. Can you move the survivors? Where? The whole estate is compromised. Adrian was quiet for a moment, thinking. Then he said, There's a secondary location, Industrial Park, Sector 7, abandoned factory. I'll send you coordinates. That place is a dump. It's also off the grid. Move them there. I'll meet you in 2 hours. Adrian, 2 hours, Irina? Keep them alive until then. He cut the connection. Vincent was already pulling up a map on his phone. The airfield Dante wired money to, it's about 90 minutes north. Private strip, minimal security. If he's planning to run, that's where he'll go. Then that's where we're going, Adrian said. Chloe's stomach twisted. You're going after him tonight? I'm not giving him time to think, time to plan, time to disappear. Adrian checked his weapon, reloading with practiced efficiency. He made this personal, so I'm going to end it personally. That's insane, Chloe said. You're exhausted. We all are. We don't even know how many people he has with him. I don't care. The finality in his voice made it clear the discussion was over. Vincent grabbed gear from one of the crates. Weapons, ammunition, tactical vests. He tossed one to Adrian, who caught it without looking. Marco closed his laptop. I'll stay here. Monitor communications. If anything changes, I'll let you know. Good. Adrian turned to Chloe. You should stay here too. Like hell. Chloe, we've been through this before, she said, her voice steady despite the fear crawling up her spine. I'm not sitting on the sidelines while you finish this. I'm coming with you. Adrian studied her for a long moment. She could see him weighing options, calculating risks. Then he pulled a handgun from the crate and held it out to her. You know how to use one of these? Chloe stared at the weapon. Point and shoot? More or less. Adrian showed her the safety, the magazine release, the basics. You probably won't hit anything, but at least you can make noise. Sometimes that's enough. She took the gun. It was heavier than she'd expected, cold, real in a way that made everything suddenly feel more dangerous. They left the warehouse and piled into the SUV. Vincent drove, Adrian in the passenger seat, Chloe in the back. The city slid past in darkness, streetlights casting orange pools on empty roads. No one spoke. The weight of what they were about to do hung in the air like a physical presence. After an hour, buildings gave way to industrial wasteland, then empty countryside. Snow-covered fields stretched into darkness on both sides of the road. Vincent killed the headlights as they approached the airfield. It was small, a single runway, a couple of hangars, a small terminal building that looked abandoned. A few lights were on in one of the hangars, casting long shadows across the tarmac. And sitting on the runway, engines already warming up, was a private jet. "There," Vincent said quietly. Adrian scanned the area with binoculars. "I see 2 guards outside the hangar, probably more inside. The jet's prepped for takeoff. He's leaving tonight." "So, what's the play?" Adrian lowered the binoculars. "We go in quiet, take out the guards, get to Dante before he reaches that plane." "And if we can't?" Adrian's expression was cold. "Then we bring the plane down." They parked the SUV in the shadow of a derelict building and approached on foot. The snow muffled their footsteps. The cold bit through Chloe's clothes, making her shiver. The 2 guards outside the hangar were smoking, their weapons slung over their shoulders. Not alert, not expecting trouble. Big mistake. Adrian and Vincent moved like shadows, splitting up to flank them. Chloe stayed back, her heart hammering, the gun heavy in her hands. It happened fast. Adrian took the first guard from behind, a hand over his mouth, a blade to his throat. The man went down without a sound. Vincent shot the second guard with a suppressed pistol, 2 quick shots to the chest. Both bodies hit the ground within seconds of each other. Adrian gestured for Chloe to move up. They entered the hangar. Inside was chaos barely contained. People rushing around, loading cargo into the jet. Chloe counted at least 8 men, all armed, all focused on their tasks. And standing near the jet stairs, talking on a phone, was Dante. He looked calm, composed, like this was just another business trip. Adrian raised his weapon, but before he could fire, one of the men spotted them. "Contact!" All hell broke loose. Gunfire erupted. Chloe dove behind a stack of crates as bullets tore through the air. Vincent was returning fire, methodical and precise. Adrian pushed forward, moving toward Dante with single-minded focus. Dante saw him coming. His eyes went wide. Shock, then understanding, then fury. He ran for the jet. Adrian chased him. Chloe forced herself to move, to follow. Her hands shaking so badly she could barely hold the gun. Around her, men were dying, screaming, falling. The hangar had become a war zone. She reached the jet just as Adrian caught up to Dante at the stairs. Dante spun, pulling a gun, but Adrian was faster. He knocked the weapon away, grabbing Dante by the throat and slamming him against the fuselage. "It's over," Adrian said. Dante smiled through the pain. Blood ran from his nose. "Is it?" Then the jet's engines roared to life. The blast of heat and wind knocked them both back. Chloe stumbled, nearly falling. The jet started to move, taxiing toward the runway. "He's got a pilot inside," Vincent shouted over the noise. "If that thing takes off..." Adrian was already running after the jet. Chloe followed, her lungs burning, her legs screaming. The jet was picking up speed. Adrian jumped, catching the open stairs, pulling himself up. Dante was right behind him. Chloe didn't think. She just ran harder, pushing her body past exhaustion, past fear, past every rational thought telling her to stop. She jumped. Her hands caught the railing. Pain shot through her shoulders as her body slammed against the stairs. She held on, her fingers screaming, her arms burning. Vincent grabbed her, hauling her up onto the stairs. They were inside the jet now, the cabin lurching as it accelerated down the runway. Adrian and Dante were fighting at the front of the cabin, a brutal hand-to-hand struggle. Punches, elbows. Dante grabbed a bottle from the galley and smashed it across Adrian's face. Adrian went down. Dante pulled a knife. Chloe raised her gun. She'd never fired a weapon before. Never pointed one at another human being. Every instinct told her to hesitate. But she thought about the bodies at the estate. The people who'd died tonight. The massacre Dante had orchestrated. She pulled the trigger. The recoil nearly knocked her backward. The shot went wide, missing Dante by a foot, but it was enough to make him flinch. Adrian surged up, driving his shoulder into Dante's midsection, slamming him into the cabin wall. The knife clattered away. The jet was almost at takeoff speed. Vincent rushed toward the cockpit. "I've got the pilot!" Gunshots. The engine screamed. The jet lurched. Then it started to slow. Dante realized what was happening. His eyes went wild. "No! No!" He tried to run for the cockpit, but Adrian caught him, throwing him to the floor. They grappled, rolling across the cabin as the jet shuddered to a stop. Finally, Adrian got on top, pinning Dante down. His hands wrapped around Dante's throat. 15 years, Adrian said, his voice raw. 15 years, and this is how it ends. Dante's face was turning red, purple, but he was still smiling. "You think this changes anything?" he choked out. "You think killing me stops what's coming? There are others, Adrian, bigger players, people who make me look like an errand boy. Then I'll deal with them too. You can't. You're one man. You can't fight them all." Adrian's grip tightened. "Watch me." "Wait," Chloe said. Adrian paused, his eyes flicking to her. "Don't kill him," she said. "Not yet." "Why not?" "Because he's right. Killing him doesn't solve anything." She moved closer, crouching down beside Dante. "But making him talk might. He said there are bigger players. We need to know who they are, where they are, how to stop them." Dante laughed. It was a wet, strangled sound. "You think I'm going to tell you anything? I think you're going to bleed out in about 5 minutes if we don't get you to a hospital," Chloe said calmly. "And the only reason you're still breathing is because we're letting you. So you're going to tell us everything, who you're working with, where they operate, how to find them, and in exchange, maybe, we let you live long enough to see a doctor." Dante stared at her, then at Adrian. "You've got guts," he said finally. "I'll give you that." "Is that a yes?" Chloe asked. Dante coughed. Blood flecked his lips. "There's a name. Carver. Richard Carver. Operates out of Chicago. He's the one funding the consolidation, buying up territories, absorbing operations. He's planning to move into New York next month, take over what's left after tonight." "And Volkov?" Adrian asked, his grip still tight on Dante's throat. "She's freelance. She'll work for whoever pays, but Carver's got her on retainer for the next 6 months. Good luck touching her." Adrian's expression was unreadable. "Anything else?" Dante's eyes were starting to glaze. "Yeah, tell her I'm sorry." "For what?" "For everything." Then he passed out. Adrian released him, standing slowly. He looked down at Dante's unconscious form, his expression hard. "What now?" Vincent asked, emerging from the cockpit. "Now we call this in," Adrian said. "Let the authorities handle him. We've got bigger problems." He pulled out his phone, making a call. Within minutes, sirens wailed in the distance. They left Dante on the jet and walked back through the snow toward the SUV. Behind them, emergency vehicles descended on the airfield, lights flashing red and blue against the darkness. Chloe's hands were still shaking. The gun felt like it weighed 1,000 pounds. "You did good," Adrian said quietly. She looked at him. "I almost got us killed." "But you didn't. You kept your head. Made the right call." He paused. Not many people could have done that. Chloe didn't know what to say to that. They drove back toward the city in silence. Dawn was starting to break, pale light creeping across the horizon, turning the snow pink and gold. It should have felt like victory. But it didn't. Because Dante had been right about one thing. This wasn't over, not by a long shot. By the time they reached the safe house, the sun was fully up, casting harsh light over a world that looked nothing like it had 24 hours ago. The safe house was a sprawling cabin buried deep in the woods about 40 miles outside the city. Adrian had bought it years ago under a shell company, kept it stocked and maintained for situations exactly like this. Off the grid, isolated, surrounded by enough forest that you could see anyone coming from a mile away. Irina was already there with the survivors from the safe room. They'd arrived an hour earlier in a convoy of armored vehicles, looking shell-shocked and exhausted. Some were injured, bandages wrapped around arms, makeshift splints on broken fingers. Others looked physically fine, but had that hollow-eyed stare that came from watching people die. Marconi sat in a corner, nursing a whiskey that was probably his third or fourth of the morning. His suit was torn, blood dried on his collar. One of his men hadn't made it out. Chloe had overheard him on the phone earlier, voice breaking as he told someone's wife that her husband wasn't coming home. Isabel Chen had claimed a spot near the fireplace, already on her laptop, already rebuilding whatever networks had been shattered. She looked composed, but Chloe noticed her hand shook slightly when she reached for her coffee cup. Kuznetsov was gone. He'd disappeared into the night the second they'd reached the safe house, taking his remaining men with him. No goodbyes? No acknowledgement? Just gone. Typical. Chloe stood on the back porch, staring out at the endless white expanse of forest. Her body ached. Her mind felt like it had been put through a shredder, but she was alive. The door opened behind her. Adrian stepped out, 2 mugs of coffee in his hands. He handed her one without a word. She took it, wrapping her frozen fingers around the warmth. They stood in silence for a while, watching the wind move through the trees. The world looked peaceful out here. Clean. Like the violence of last night had happened in a different universe entirely. "How many did we lose?" Chloe asked finally. Adrian's jaw tightened. 14 confirmed dead at the estate. Another 6 wounded. Could have been worse. Could have been better. Could have been me. He took a sip of coffee. If you hadn't figured out it was Dante, I'd be in a body bag right now. Chloe didn't know what to say to that. She'd replayed the moment in her head a dozen times, the moment she'd accused Dante. If she'd been wrong, Adrian probably would have killed her. If she'd been right but stayed quiet, he'd be dead. The margin between survival and death had been razor thin. "What happens now?" she asked. Adrian was quiet for a long moment. "I rebuild. Track down Carver. Make sure what happened at the summit doesn't happen again." "And Volkov? She's a ghost. She'll surface eventually. They always do. And when she does, I'll be ready." "You sound very sure of that." "I have to be." Adrian's voice was flat. "Because if I'm not, if I show even a second of doubt, everything I've built falls apart. People need to believe I'm untouchable, that I can't be beaten. The second they stop believing that, it's over." Chloe turned to look at him. "You know that's exhausting, right? Pretending to be invincible all the time?" "I'm not pretending." "Yes, you are." She met his eyes. "You're human, Adrian. You bleed. You make mistakes. You almost died last night. Pretending otherwise doesn't make you stronger. It just makes you a target." Adrian stared at her. For a moment, she thought he might actually argue, might tell her she didn't understand, that she couldn't possibly know what it took to survive in his world. But he didn't. Instead, he looked away, his expression unreadable. "You're probably right." "Probably?" "Definitely." He almost smiled. "But it doesn't change anything. This is the world I live in. The only way to survive is to be harder than everyone else. Smarter. More ruthless. Or you could build something different." "Like what?" "I don't know." Chloe took a sip of coffee, thinking. "Something that doesn't require you to be alone all the time. Something where you actually trust the people around you." Adrian's laugh was bitter. "I trusted Dante. Look how that turned out." "Dante was a mistake. One mistake. That doesn't mean everyone's going to betray you. Doesn't mean they won't either." Chloe wanted to argue. Wanted to tell him he was wrong, that trust wasn't a weakness, that building walls around yourself only meant dying alone. But she'd spent the last 6 months learning exactly how fragile trust could be. How quickly people turned on you when things got hard. How easily betrayal could destroy everything you'd built. So instead, she just said, "I guess we're both pretty damaged, huh?" Adrian looked at her, really looked at her, and for the first time since she'd met him, she saw something other than cold calculation in his eyes. She saw recognition. "Yeah," he said quietly. "I guess we are." The door opened again. Vincent stepped out, his expression grim. "We've got a problem." Adrian turned. "What kind of problem?" "The kind where the feds just showed up at the estate. They're crawling all over it, and they're asking questions about you." Adrian's expression didn't change, but Chloe could see the tension in his shoulders. "What kind of questions?" "The kind that suggests someone fed them information. Details about your operations, your associates, your financials. Someone's trying to build a case." "Dante," Adrian said. "That'd be my guess. He probably had a contingency plan. If he couldn't kill you, he'd destroy you another way." Adrian was quiet for a moment, thinking. Then he pulled out his phone and made a call. I need a lawyer, he said. The best you've got. Money's not an issue. A pause. Yeah, I know what time it is. I don't care. Get them on a plane to New York. Now. He hung up. What are you going to do? Chloe asked. What I always do. Play the game better than everyone else. Adrian's expression was hard. If they want to come after me legally, fine. I've got enough lawyers and enough leverage to tie them up in court for years. But they're not going to win. They never do. That's not a long-term solution, Vincent said. I know, but it buys us time. Time to find Carver. Time to clean up the mess Dante left behind. Time to figure out who else might be gunning for me. Irina appeared in the doorway. The survivors are asking what happens next. They want to know if they're safe here. They are, Adrian said. For now. But we need to move them to more permanent locations. Spread them out. Make them harder to target. I'll coordinate it, Irina said. She glanced at Chloe. What about her? Adrian looked at Chloe. That's up to her. All eyes turned to Chloe. She felt the weight of their stares, the unspoken question hanging in the air. She'd proven herself useful over the past week. She'd figured out things no one else had seen. She'd survived when most people would have died. But was she really ready to step into this world permanently, to trade one kind of danger for another, to tie her fate to a man who lived in the shadows and made enemies for breakfast? The smart choice would be to walk away, take whatever money Adrian offered her, disappear somewhere warm, rebuild her life far from all of this. But Chloe had learned something over the past 6 months on the street, and especially over the past week running for her life. She didn't want safe. She wanted to matter. I'm staying, she said. Adrian raised an eyebrow. You sure about that? No, but I'm doing it anyway. A faint smile crossed his face. Then welcome to the team. Over the next 2 weeks, Chloe learned what it really meant to work for someone like Adrian Versetti. It wasn't glamorous, it wasn't easy, and it sure as hell wasn't safe. She spent 12-hour days in front of computer screens, digging through financial records, tracking shell companies, mapping out Carver's operations piece by piece. Vincent taught her how to use encrypted communications, how to cover her digital tracks, how to extract information from sources who didn't want to talk. Irina taught her how to shoot properly, how to move without being seen, how to stay calm when someone was trying to kill you. And Adrian? Adrian taught her how to think like someone who'd spent 15 years surviving in a world where one mistake could cost you everything. Assume everyone's lying, he told her one night as they reviewed intelligence reports. Even when they're telling the truth, assume there's something they're not saying. People protect themselves first, always. That's a pretty dark way to see the world, Chloe said. It's kept me alive this long. Has it made you happy? Adrian looked at her, and for a moment something vulnerable flickered across his face. Then it was gone. Happiness is for people who can afford it, he said. I can't. But despite his cynicism, despite the walls he'd built around himself, Chloe started to see cracks. Small moments where the mask slipped and the human underneath showed through. Like when one of his men came back injured from a job and Adrian personally made sure he got the best medical care available. Or when Marco mentioned his daughter's birthday and Adrian made sure a present was delivered anonymously. Or the way he listened when Irina talked about her family back in Russia, really listened, like it actually mattered to him. He wasn't just a cold-blooded crime lord. He was a man trying to hold together an empire while keeping the few people he cared about alive. And Chloe found herself respecting that more than she'd expected. 3 weeks after the Summit massacre, Vincent finally got the break they'd been waiting for. Found him, Vincent said, bursting into the war room where Chloe and Adrian were working. Carver, I know where he is. Adrian was on his feet immediately. Where? Chicago, but not for long. My source says he's moving to New York next week, setting up a permanent base of operations. He's moving fast, Adrian said. He thinks you're weak. Thinks the Summit proved you can't protect your own territory. He's planning to swoop in, absorb what's left, consolidate power before you can rebuild. Adrian's expression went cold. Then we don't let him make it to New York. You want to hit him in Chicago? Vincent asked. I want to end this before it starts. Adrian pulled up a map on the laptop. Where exactly is he? Vincent pointed to a location on the screen. Private club, high security. He's meeting with his lieutenants tomorrow night, planning the New York takeover. How many people will he have? At least 20, maybe more, All armed, all professional. So we're outnumbered. By about 4-1, yeah. Adrian smiled. It wasn't a nice smile. Good. They'll get overconfident. That's insane, Chloe said. You can't just walk into a place like that with 4 guys and expect to walk back out. I'm not walking in, Adrian said. I'm burning it down. Over the next 24 hours, they planned the operation with military precision. Adrian called in favors from people Chloe had never heard of. Weapons appeared, equipment materialized. A team of specialists arrived, men and women who looked like they'd done this kind of thing before and survived to tell about it. Chloe found herself caught between admiration and terror at how efficiently Adrian could mobilize resources when he needed to. The night before they left for Chicago, Chloe couldn't sleep. She stood in the safe house kitchen at 2 a.m. making tea when Adrian appeared in the doorway. Nervous? He asked. Terrified. Good. That means you're smart. He poured himself a glass of water. You don't have to come, you know. You can stay here. Keep working the intelligence angle. And miss all the fun? Chloe tried to smile, but it felt shaky. Besides, you might need someone to remind you not to do anything stupid. I appreciate the concern, but stupid is kind of my specialty. I've noticed. They stood in comfortable silence for a moment. Then Chloe said, Can I ask you something? Sure. Why are you really doing this? Going after Carver yourself instead of just, I don't know, hiring someone else to handle it? Adrian was quiet for a long moment. Because 15 years ago, I let someone else handle something important. I delegated, I trusted. And the person I trusted was Dante. He did the job, did it well, and I rewarded him by making him my second in command. And he betrayed you. Yeah, but that's not the lesson. Adrian met her eyes. The lesson is that the things that matter, the things that define who you are and what you're building, those things you can't delegate. You have to do them yourself. Even if it's dangerous, even if you might fail, because if you don't, you lose the right to call it yours. Chloe thought about that. That's either very wise or very stupid. Probably both. Yeah, Chloe said, probably. They flew to Chicago the next day on a private plane Adrian had chartered. The flight was quiet, tense, everyone mentally preparing for what was coming. Chloe sat next to Irina, who was cleaning her weapons with methodical precision. You scared? Irina asked without looking up. Yeah. Good. Fear keeps you sharp. Just don't let it freeze you. Any other advice? Irina finally looked at her. Stay behind me. Do what I say when I say it. And if things go bad, run. Don't try to be a hero. Heroes get dead. Comforting. Irina almost smiled. I'm not here to comfort you. I'm here to keep you alive. They landed in Chicago as the sun was setting. The private club where Carver was meeting his lieutenants was in an upscale neighborhood, the kind of place where money whispered instead of shouted, heavy security, discreet cameras, the kind of establishment that catered to people who valued privacy and could pay for it. Adrian's plan was simple in theory, brutal in execution. They'd create a distraction at the front, a fire, an explosion, something big enough to draw security away from the main building. Then Adrian and a small team would go in through a service entrance, locate Carver, and extract him before reinforcements arrived. Clean, efficient, probably impossible, but they were doing it anyway. Chloe's job was to stay in the van with Marco, monitoring communications and camera feeds, ready to call out threats or changes in the security pattern, the part where she stayed safe and didn't get shot. She hated it, but she'd promised Adrian she wouldn't do anything stupid, so here she was. The operation began at exactly 9 p.m. Vincent triggered the distraction, a small explosive device in a dumpster near the club's front entrance. Nothing big enough to hurt anyone, but loud and bright enough to get attention. Security rushed toward the explosion. Adrian's team moved. Chloe watched on the monitors, her heart in her throat, as Adrian, Irina, and 3 others slipped through the service entrance and into the building. They moved like ghosts, fast and silent, weapons up, clearing corners with practiced efficiency. Second floor, east corridor, Chloe said into her headset. 2 guards. Stationary. Copy. Adrian's voice came back, calm and controlled. She watched as Irina took point, moving ahead of the group. The 2 guards never saw her coming. She dropped them both in seconds, quiet and efficient. They kept moving. Main conference room is on the 3rd floor, Marco said, pulling up blueprints. That's where Carver should be. How many people in the room? Adrian asked. Chloe checked the thermal imaging. I'm reading 8 heat signatures, maybe 9. Hard to tell. Good enough. They reached the 3rd floor. The hallway outside the conference room was empty, too empty. Adrian, wait, Chloe said. Something's wrong. There should be guards here. I know. It's a trap. Probably. But we're already here, so let's see how it plays out. Before Chloe could respond, Adrian kicked open the conference room door. Inside, Richard Carver sat at the head of a long table, a glass of whiskey in his hand, looking for all the world like he'd been expecting them. He was younger than Chloe had pictured, early 40s maybe, with the kind of face that belonged in a boardroom or on a magazine cover, tailored suit, expensive watch, the smile of someone who'd never lost a bet in his life. Adrian Versetti, Carver said, his voice smooth and amused. I was wondering when you'd show up. Adrian's weapon was trained on Carver's head. Stand up. Or what? You'll shoot me? Carver took a sip of whiskey. We both know you won't, not until you understand what you're up against. I understand plenty. Do you? Carver set down his glass. Because from where I'm sitting, you're a dying empire clinging to past glory. The summit proved that. Dante proved that. You're vulnerable, Adrian. And vulnerability is blood in the water. Funny, Adrian said. I was going to say the same thing about you. Carver's smile widened. You think you can intimidate me? You think showing up here with your little team is going to make me back down? I've got resources you can't even imagine. Money, power, people. Elena Volkov works for me now. Did Dante mention that before you killed him? She's on my payroll, and if you pull that trigger, she'll hunt down everyone you've ever cared about and put them in the ground. Dante's not dead, Adrian said, and Volkov doesn't scare me. Then you're a fool. Maybe. But I'm the fool who's standing in your conference room with a gun pointed at your head. So I'd say I'm doing all right. For the first time, Carver's smile faltered. Adrian stepped closer. Here's what's going to happen. You're going to shut down your New York operation. You're going to pull your people out of my territory, and you're going to stay in Chicago where you belong. Do that, and you get to keep breathing. And if I refuse, then I burn everything you've built to the ground. Carver laughed. It was a cold, calculated sound. You think you can fight me? I have 50 men in this building alone. You have what? 5? 6? The second you walk out that door, you're dead. Funny thing about that, Adrian said. I'm not walking out the door. He pulled a small device from his pocket and pressed a button. Somewhere in the building, something started beeping. Carver's face went pale. What did you do? Insurance, Adrian said. See, while you were sitting here drinking your expensive whiskey, my people were planning enough explosives in this building to level a city block. So here's the new deal. You call off your men, we all walk out of here alive, and you forget New York exists. Or I blow this whole place to hell, and we all die together. You're bluffing. Am I? The beeping got louder. Carver's eyes darted to the door. Sweat beaded on his forehead. His composure was cracking, the smooth corporate mask slipping to reveal the fear underneath. Call them off, Adrian said quietly. Or we find out together if I'm bluffing. For a long, tense moment, no one moved. Then Carver reached for his phone. Stand down, he said into it, his voice tight. All units, stand down. Adrian gestured to Irina. Check it. Irina moved to the window, scanning the street below with binoculars. After a moment, she nodded. They're pulling back. Adrian looked at Carver. Smart choice. This isn't over, Carver said, his voice shaking with barely controlled rage. You can't watch your back forever. I've been doing it for 15 years. I think I can manage a few more. Adrian backed toward the door. Oh, and Carver, if I see any of your people in New York, if I even hear a rumor that you're thinking about moving into my territory, I won't bother with a conversation next time. I'll just kill you. You can't. Yes, I can. And we both know it. Adrian and his team backed out of the room, weapons still raised, moving quickly down the hallway. Chloe watched on the monitors as they made their way through the building, every second feeling like an hour. They reached the service entrance. Then they were outside. Then they were in the van. Marco gunned the engine and they tore away from the club, disappearing into Chicago traffic. For a long moment, no one spoke. Then Vincent started laughing. You didn't actually plant explosives, did you? Adrian smiled. Of course not. That would have been insane. So you were bluffing. Completely. You're out of your mind, Irina said, but she was smiling too. Chloe felt something bubbling up in her chest. Relief, adrenaline, the sheer insanity of what they'd just pulled off. She started laughing. It was probably hysteria, probably the adrenaline crash, but she couldn't stop. And then everyone else was laughing too, the tension breaking like a dam bursting. They'd done it. Against all odds, against every rational expectation, they'd actually done it. The flight back to New York was quieter, calmer. People dozed in their seats, exhausted from the adrenaline crash. Chloe sat next to Adrian, who was staring out the window at the clouds below. Thank you, she said quietly. He looked at her. For what? For not leaving me behind. For trusting me to be part of this. You earned it. Did I? Yeah. Adrian's expression was serious. You could have run a dozen times, could have taken the money I offered you and disappeared, but you didn't. You stayed. You fought. That's worth more than any skill set. Chloe didn't know what to say to that, so she just said, What happens now? Now? Adrian leaned back in his seat. Now we rebuild, properly this time, with people we can actually trust. You trust me? I'm starting to. That's progress. Yeah, Adrian said. It is. They landed in New York just before dawn. The city looked different somehow, brighter, full of possibility instead of threat. Maybe it was just Chloe's perspective that had changed. Adrian called a meeting at the safe house for that afternoon. Everyone who'd survived the Summit massacre was there. Marconi, Chen, a few others. Even Kuznetsov had shown up, looking uncomfortable but present. Adrian stood at the head of the table, looking at each of them in turn. 3 weeks ago, we almost died, he said. Someone close to me betrayed us. And we paid the price. People died. Operations fell apart. Everything we'd built nearly came crashing down. He paused. But we're still here. And the people who tried to destroy us? They failed. Dante's in federal custody. Carver's running scared back to Chicago. And we're stronger than we were before. How do you figure? Marconi asked, his voice rough. Because now we know what we're fighting for, Adrian said. Not territory, not money, not power for its own sake. We're fighting to protect what we've built. The people we care about, the lives we've made, and that's worth more than any empire. He looked at Chloe as he said it, and she felt something warm spread through her chest. So here's what happens next, Adrian continued. We rebuild, together, not as competing factions fighting over scraps, but as actual partners. We share intelligence. We coordinate operations. We watch each other's backs. Because the next time someone comes for us, they're not going to find a bunch of isolated targets. They're going to find a united front. Isabel Chen leaned forward. And who leads this united front? I do, Adrian said simply. But not alone. I want advisors. People who'll tell me when I'm wrong. People who'll challenge my decisions. People I can actually trust. He looked at Chloe, starting with her. Every head in the room turned to stare at Chloe. She felt her face flush. I don't have experience. You have something better, Adrian interrupted. You have the ability to see things no one else sees. To ask questions no one else thinks to ask. That's what I need. That's what we all need. Marconi studied her for a moment. Then he nodded. I can work with that. Chen shrugged. If Adrian trusts her, that's good enough for me. One by one, the others agreed. And just like that, Chloe went from homeless journalist to advisor to one of the most powerful men in New York. The next 3 months passed in a blur of activity. Adrian restructured his entire operation, bringing in new people, implementing new protocols, building something that looked less like a criminal empire and more like an actual organization. Chloe built an intelligence network that would have made her journalism professors weep with envy. She had sources in every major institution in the city: police, city hall, corporate boardrooms. Information flowed through her like water, and she learned how to filter it, analyze it, turn it into actionable intelligence. She also learned that power came with a price. There were threats. always threats. People who wanted what Adrian had, people who saw opportunity in chaos. Chloe's name started appearing on watch lists. Her old apartment, the one that had burned 6 months ago, was visited by people asking questions. But Adrian kept his word. He protected her, made sure she was safe, made sure she had everything she needed. And slowly, carefully, she started to trust him. Not blindly, not completely, but enough. 4 months after the summit, Chloe stood in the same garage where she'd first woken up, staring at the black armored SUV that had started everything. The vehicle gleamed under the overhead lights, polished to perfection. But it wasn't the same anymore. It had been upgraded, reinforced, turned into something more than just a getaway car. It was a symbol of how far she'd come. Adrian walked up beside her, dressed in a sharp suit, his hands in his pockets. "Ready?" he asked. Chloe nodded. They'd received intelligence that morning about a new threat, someone trying to move into the territory they'd cleared when they'd pushed Carver back. Small-time operation, but growing fast. The kind of thing that needed to be handled before it became a problem. Adrian opened the passenger door of the SUV. "After you." Chloe climbed in, settling into the leather seat. It felt different now. Not like a prison, not like a cage, like power. Adrian slid into the driver's seat and started the engine. The SUV purred to life, smooth and controlled. "You know," Chloe said as they pulled out of the garage, 6 months ago, I was freezing to death in an alley. I had nothing. I was nothing. And now? Now I'm still figuring it out," she admitted. "But I'm not nothing anymore." Adrian glanced at her. "No, you're definitely not. Definitely." They drove through the city, the skyline glittering in the afternoon light. Chloe looked out the window, watching the world blur past. She'd started this journey as a nobody, a washed-up journalist with nothing to lose and nowhere to go, someone the world had chewed up and forgotten. Now she was something else entirely. Not a victim, not just a survivor. Someone who'd taken the worst the world could throw at her and turned it into strength. Because that was the thing about power, Chloe had learned. The world didn't give it to you. It didn't hand you second chances wrapped in pretty bows. You took them, you fought for them, you bled for them. And when the dust settled, you either stood on top of the rubble or got buried beneath it. Chloe had chosen to stand. She'd chosen to fight. And she was done apologizing for it. Adrian pulled up to a red light and looked over at her. "You good?" Chloe met his eyes and smiled. "Yeah, I'm good." The light turned green. They drove forward into whatever came next. Together. Because some partnerships were forged in fire. Some alliances were born from desperation and survival. And some of the strongest bonds were built by two broken people who decided they were done being broken. Chloe had learned something important over these past months. Something about herself. Something about the world. Life didn't care about fairness. It didn't reward good intentions or punish bad ones with any consistency. People betrayed you. Systems failed you. The ground beneath your feet could give way without warning. But you always had a choice. You could let it destroy you, or you could let it remake you. Chloe had chosen to be remade. And as they drove through the city, past the alley where she'd almost died, past the buildings where she used to work, past all the pieces of her old life, she realized something else. She wasn't running anymore. She was hunting. And that made all the difference.